Welcome. I am Ritnika Nain. I am the owner of the music company Music Gets Me High, and I'm also the country head for CD Baby. Under MGMH Academy, I've released the book Indie 101, and we also teach music business as SACAC. In today's webinar, we're going to discuss the role of IPRS in the indie music context. What are the pros and cons of joining IPRS? And how does the new rule on live streaming affect independent artists? To discuss this further, we have Rafael Pereira with us today, who is the managing partner of Tin Nuts, a new age IP law firm that works with creators across disciplines and entrepreneurs across sectors. Welcome, Rafael, and thank you
Thank
for
you for
being
having me.
here.
Pleasure.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you've been in the indie scene for a while already?
Yeah, I have a larger background in events and entertainment, as you know, Ritnika, as opposed to the law. Um, for the past 12 or is it 13 years, I've been backstage at festivals, uh, managing hospitality and logistics, really working with artists up until a show. Advancing artists is what I was really engaged for. I founded a company about 5 years ago that did large-scale event staffing and all these kind of management solutions for hospitality, logistics, advancing. And I did all of this while I was putting myself through law school, interestingly. And I started that company because housing.com received millions of dollars in investment. And I thought, hey, you know what, why don't you do this and maybe get a piece of that pie? 5 years later, reality, I guess. But yeah, here I am. For the past 4 years, I have been practicing as an independent counsel. Tin Nuts was my chance at creating value under a brand, and it's a lockdown launch law firm. And we help artists and entrepreneurs identify what is the value that they're creating, how to protect that value, and what steps they should take to kind of monetize that value as well.
Wow.
So that's about it in a nutshell.
Makes sense. So before we kind of jump into our main topic, which I know a lot of people are very interested in learning, I just want to let you guys know that if you're on Zoom, you can send questions throughout the webinar, and I will be checking them out and we'll be answering them at some point towards the end of the webinar. If you guys are on Facebook, I do have the MGMH Facebook page open. So in case you send us a message there, hopefully I will get that. I'm like multitasking here. So, all right, so let's just jump right in. Let's start with what is a song? What is copyright? And we tell artists that a song has two parts. There is the master and then there's a publishing. But a lot of people don't really understand the difference. So maybe can you start off by explaining, the parts of a song and how it all kind of, comes together?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll explain the parts of the song and also give you some correlation in the Indian structure and the Copyright Act and how that's viewed, right? So let's go from idea to expression and then to asset. Okay. When you have an idea, it could be either you come up with the lyrics of a song first, or you come up with the music for a song, right? So the lyrics are protected as literary works themselves. The music is protected as a musical work itself. You put the lyrics and the music together, it forms a song. So that's the first part. That's what people call the underlying work or the publishing, right? Which is the lyrics and the composition. Then when you take that lyrics and the composition, an artist or a singer comes in and lends their voice or their performance through an instrument or through their voice to that lyrics and composition. And then what happens is it becomes a performance. That performance and the person who gives that performance, who performs, has a performer's right. So that's the second part that I'd like everyone to understand. And the third part is when that performance is recorded, it becomes a sound recording, which is the sound recording or the master. So that's the third part. Now, the performer's right has is also in the Copyright Act. It has a different status. There are royalties that should accrue for the performers, right? But we can get to that at a later stage. The sound recording is what we know, or the recording of the performance is what we know as the master. So you have the underlying works or the publishing, which is the lyrics and composition. You have the performance, which has a performer's right. And you have the sound recording or masters, which is protected as a sound recording in the Copyright Act.
So just from an independent artist point of view, if they are the ones who are writing the songs, they are the ones who are composing the music, and they are the ones who are singing it, then they basically have all of those three. And then there's a recording part as well, which is also there. So there's technically 4 parts to a song if you're an independent artist.
Yes, essentially 4 parts that you, if you're a singer-songwriter, and you're writing not just the lyrics but also the music, that's a part that you own, and you own all these 4 parts. You should receive, and if you think about this from a royalty perspective, you should receive royalty for each of these parts. And every time you receive, you're receiving royalty, you're trying to protect your right. You need to ask yourself, what right are you protecting, and what right are you receiving this royalty against?
Exactly. So when you are so when, for example, you take out music from a streaming a digital distributor like a CD Baby or wherever, you are basically just getting your master rights or recorded music rights. You're actually not getting your publishing rights, which is for the composition and for the lyrics. So if as an indie artist you have just written the lyrics, or if you have just played on the song and your friend has written the lyrics, there is some more income which is pending, basically.
Yes. So that, I mean, we were discussing that the small pizza versus the large pizza, and how do you really make this, your pie, bigger. It's essentially right now, there is either your pie is too small or you're not collecting a large piece of the pie right now. Because if you're collecting from a distributor like CD Baby, you just, CD Baby is paying you out the master side, right? You're not collecting the publishing side or the
regular, the regular setting. We don't do the publishing part yet in India, at least. Yeah. All right. So now let's talk about collecting societies, which is what IPRS is, right? IPRS is a collecting society. So let's talk about what is the role of a collecting society primarily.
So collecting societies, or they're called collective management organizations. And the reason they're called collective management organizations is they, as a collective, I mean, we are stronger as a collective. We're able to protect rights better as a collective. And when we come together, we're able to enforce those rights better also. So imagine if you had a song and your song is really popular and you want people to play it everywhere. You're going to going to take a copy of your song, go to every club, bar, radio station, and live event and say, hey, play this song. If you think about licensing from that perspective, imagine if someone wanted to play popular music and they had to take a license from the owner of every song to play every song that they're playing. That means they would, in let's say it's 20 songs an hour, and their cafe is open for 8 hours. That's the amount of licenses they're going to have to get on an individual basis.
And so just to interrupt, sorry, why does a venue need to get a license?
So essentially, there's something called public performance, right? When you download a song onto your computer, or you are streaming a song, now the money that you're paying is not essentially for public performance, but what you're paying that money for is for private consumption or for user consumption. Public performance is defined where there's any more than 2 people in a setting, and then music is being played or can be publicly heard. That's public performance. And there are some interesting cases of the extent to which this has been, this has been pursued. The case of Happy Birthday, when families started singing Happy Birthday at home, and it became popular as a tune, Happy Birthday as we know it. That started getting enforced, and there were labels that were saying, hey, you can't sing this song without paying us a license.
Yeah, because Happy Birthday is actually copyrighted. I mean, I know that.
The version that we sing, that's within copyright. And I believe it's Sony Music that owns the copyright for that song. And essentially they wanted to receive public performance royalty on that, in that.
Mhm.
I think so. At some point, a line was drawn by the societies or by the licensing organizations or the PROs,
Mhm.
saying, okay, if it's at home, a mother singing a lullaby to their, or a father singing their lullaby to their children,
Mhm.
it's not public performance. But essentially, if it's anything more than that, it's a birthday party, you're inviting hundreds of people over, that is public performance. And
All right.
even though
So
you may,
basically, the reason collecting a live music venue needs to get a license is because you're basically, playing to a larger group of people as opposed to a smaller group, which is what you normally do, when you consume one-on-one basis. So, all right. So going forward, you said collecting societies because we all can't individually. Collect, and the venue, sorry, can't individually get licenses from every artist. That's why a collecting society is basically created, so that they can kind of figure out how to collect on a blanket basis, on a larger basis.
yeah, so collective licensing is the best form of licensing large catalogs or making music accessible, or rightly accessible to the public. And essentially, they on ground and for bars and restaurants, they issue blanket licenses. So they don't say, hey, we're going to license only 200 songs to you, which are probably a smaller label can. They can only say, okay, 200 songs. What a society can do is they can issue their whole repertoire under a license to you and say, okay, you can either get a hosting license to have it on your CDJs, for everywhere you take it to, because you also need a license to host that content. And that's something that a lot of us forget. To have content and to keep it today, you need a hosting license, and that's what a lot of platforms have. They have a license to host that content on their servers, and
Mhm.
not just offer it for streaming, but also to host it.
Mhm.
And essentially, societies then also can, through reciprocal arrangements, which I think we can go further into detail
Mhm.
about, which is basically, if you have IPRS in India, which has certain direct members and repertoire that is directly registered with them, they
Mhm.
have reciprocal arrangements with societies in other countries as well to represent their repertoire in an public performance environment, which could
Mhm.
be events, retail, um, radio, things like that. And essentially, that's how they're able to go out and say, hey, they don't I don't think any society can really say, and any society today can say they represent all the music in the world, but they say we represent a majority share, and that's how they come up with tariffs. And this is common for any CMO, which is collective management organization. Any CMO, you also know them as PROs, or performance rights organizations. um, they create these tariffs on the basis of how much of a share of the music in the market they represent. And then they go out and license that repertoire under a blanket license to event promoters, restaurateurs, club owners, radio stations, things like that. And we'll come to radio, which is
Yeah.
quite interesting. Um,
So, so just to kind of make it very simple for our viewers, the job of an IPRS is basically to issue blanket licenses to public places so that they can collect revenue for all of their members. Because as a venue, they need to pay if they are consuming music in a public space. So they need to get a license from IPRS. A blanket license is basically you pay one fee to cover all the music that is being listened to, which comes under their thing. If their members are signed in, great. We'll give you one license. We'll collect that money, and then depending on whose music you've consumed or however it works, we will distribute that money to our members. In essence, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So organizations like IPRS, they have a distribution scheme. Every organization has a different distribution scheme, and the distribution scheme differs from on the basis of how the revenue is generated. So there is a different revenue scheme for TV, for radio, for events, for retail, There's a separate distribution scheme for each of this. IPRS has this on their website, so you can go and check it out. They also have separate codes under which they pay this royalty back to you. And they also have something called a minimum royalty, depending on the number of songs that you register with them, the number of years you've been a member with them. Those things really affect how and how much of a royalty and when you will receive your royalty.
Okay. All right. So next question would be, how does one become a member of IPRS? We actually have a question in the chat which asks something similar. Do you need to join an agency like Turnkey, which is, Atul's company, which is a publishing firm, or can you join them directly? How does it work? Is it, so they're basically asking, like, how does one become a member of a collecting society like IPRS? Like, let's focus on IPRS for now.
Yeah. So essentially, Turnkey is a publisher, and you need a publisher for a lot of the work that I will describe later on. Because unless you'd like to do it yourself, and independent artists, I think, like their independence 360. So if you'd like to do it yourself, I'll let you know how you can do it. But regardless of whether you have a publisher or not, you should register with a society like IPRS. And the reason you do that is, if you look at what IPRS is collecting, they're collecting from, they're licensing some of the major festivals that you're probably playing at. So if you're playing at an NH7 Weekender, a Grub Fest, or a Sunburn, a Supersonic, a Sula, even a Magnetic Fields, I'm not too sure, but essentially all these festivals are paying public performance licenses, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you were playing cover music at any of these festivals, or if you were playing cover songs at bars or restaurants, the money that the money that accrues from that public performance would go to towards the authors and the composers of the music that you've covered. But if you're playing originals, that money should be coming to you,
Yes.
and that should be distributed amongst everyone who's played at the festival, or every song played at the festival, and should be distributed accordingly.
Yeah.
So therefore, and now let me answer this question, although it's not yet come up. What happens is IPRS has already licensed these festivals, and you're not a member. So how are they doing this? So IPRS has kind of a checks and balance system where essentially, if they've collected money on behalf of a song or a member who's not a non-member, they will keep that money for up to 3 years and wait for that person to become a member and collect that money or claim that money. And this is how it works in other societies as well. But I would say if you're an independent artist and you've played at a lot of these festivals, or you've played at bars which are paying a license fee, you should right now go ahead and, number one, collect your set list. Number one, register yourself.
So that's the thing. So how does one become a member? Let's go into the basics.
So if you go up to the IPRS website, you'll see a membership form, and you'll see some criteria that they ask you for. It begins there. You fill up that form. There is a bit of paperwork required. It's not as fast as we're used to, because it requires some amount of verification as well. The society needs to check if you're a legitimate member, you're actually putting out music, or you're just registered. They wouldn't let you register if you've not put out anything yet. Once there is a repertoire that you're claiming as yours, or you're assigning to them. I think one important thing to understand is IPRS, when you're becoming a member, makes you sign an assignment deed. Now, what that assignment deed is, when I explain that concept of collective licensing, it's essentially you saying, okay, I've created 10 songs, I've authored 10 songs, and I am assigning my right to issue a license to IPRS. And that's what's happening with the assignment deed. Once that assignment deed is created, then that goes into like this master repertoire that IPRS has, and the IPRS can then also license my songs to be performed at events, to be performed at bars and venues and clubs.
So just to kind of recap, how does one become a member of IPRS? By going to their website, by signing up. You do not need to be signed to a music publisher to register with an IPRS. You can actually go ahead and do it yourself. Once you register, it is not just important to register, and this is something we should really stress upon. Once you become a member, every single song that you release, you have to register those works, those songs with IPRS. What a lot of artists do is they become members and then they do nothing after that. And that is very important to remember, that once you become a member, IPRS isn't going to magically know that you took out a new album or a new single. You have to tell them, this is my new work that's coming out, and then they will start figuring out where you've used it, what's happening, all of that. Now, another point to this is that who can actually join IPRS? If I have just a singer, can I join IPRS? If I have not written the lyrics and I have not composed the song, can I join IPRS? Rafael.
Yes, you can. So you can be so IPRS, to be a member of IPRS, you're either a lyricist or a composer or a publisher.
But if I
In
have
India,
just sung the song and I have not composed it and I haven't written the lyrics, then I cannot join the
no, you can't.
IPRS.
There is a separate organization for that called ISRA, which
I do
represents
know.
the performers, right?
Exactly.
And that is a society that I would recommend you to
For
join. And
just singers. So
also
just, yeah. Sorry, just
to
wanted to, just to kind of recap this. If you are an independent artist who writes his own music, who composes their own song, you can join IPRS. If you do not write the lyrics, if you do not write the composition, and you have just sung somebody else's written works or whatever you want to call it, then you can join ISRA, which is ISRA. All right, go ahead, Rafael.
to what you were saying earlier, and some of you may have publishers. Remember, the publisher's job is not usually to register you, and you need to be registered either way. So um, whether you have a publisher or not, you need to register, and here's why. IPRS will pay out 50% of the revenue coming in to a publisher, which is called the publisher's share, and 50% to the author composer. And how they, if there is a lyricist and a composer who are different people, then it's 25% to the lyricist and 25% to the composer. So you need to register to collect your share. And I would suggest you should register regardless of whether you have a publisher or not, because most societies in the world will not allow a publisher to touch the lyricist or composer share. They want to pay that directly to the lyricist and composer.
Exactly. So either which way, whether you have a publisher with you or not, sometimes the publisher, if you have a publisher, they can help you register with IPRS. But either which way, you as an artist have to register with IPRS. Now, if you were a band where you collectively compose and write the music, then each individual person would have to be a member of IPRS, and you would register the works, and you would all be co-authors for each of those songs, so that you can all get equal share for it. All right. So now let's moving on to the next question. We have, from where does IPRS collect money? I know you discussed this, but I just want to kind of just list out the various places. One would be, like you said, public performance places. Where else?
So clubs, bars, restaurants, events, whether they're concerts or private events, corporate events, whatever they may be, TV, radio, broadcast, internet. These are some of the major parts where IPRS will come in. And forgive me if I forget anything, but essentially, IPRS is collecting. Has the mandate for digital, so it's collecting in all the digital realms as well. Mm-hmm. It's collecting from a Facebook. I'm sure all of you saw those announcements that IPRS has done a deal with Facebook. So they're collecting from Facebook. They're doing deals with Spotify, Apple Music, Ghana.
Exactly.
Maybe not Ghana, but
yeah.
So essentially all these they're collecting. And the important thing to understand, Ritika, is that it's different. You need to view IPRS and this repertoire differently for online versus offline. And when I say that, what I mean is On ground, there are these reciprocal arrangements. So for events, clubs, bars, restaurants, TV,
Mm-hmm.
um, radio, essentially IPRS has reciprocal arrangements in place
Mm-hmm.
for uh, for licensing content which is not directly content of their members or not directly their repertoire of their reciprocal societies. But for digital, IPRS only has, only licenses its own repertoire to these radio stations or to um, IPRS only licenses its repertoire to platforms like Ghana, Spotify, digital radio, interactive radio, non-interactive
Yeah.
digital radio.
Yeah. So when it comes to collecting from venues and things like that, the only way IPRS, if you are a member of IPRS and you are playing gigs, the only way IPRS will know you have played a show and give you a piece of the pie of what they've collected from the license money from that venue is if you submit a set list. And a set list should be submitted even if you're playing covers, because if you are playing covers of artists you admire, you would want them to get paid something, right, at some point in their lives. So the most important thing is making sure either the venue, can an artist submit the set list themselves saying I played at this venue, or does the venue have to do that? Any idea about that?
I think fastest finger first, I would say, in this scenario. You should, anywhere you're playing, you should always. So I used to always advise artists to put in a clause in their agreement saying that the organizer, the promoter, the venue owner is responsible for all licensing.
Mm-hmm.
And licensing used to always be an icky point for a gig getting interrupted, and essentially um, nothing could really stop a copyright owner from enforcing their right.
Mm-hmm.
I would say best practice is to always get a copy of the receipt of the license paid, whether it is for an event, so just a single day license, or from the venue who may not give you a copy of their annual license.
I
But
doubt.
essentially, if you do get that, that also can go and can be submitted as proof. You have a set list with a date, time, and also important to give them the entire schedule or lineup
Yeah.
with
Who all played?
performance times, yeah,
Maybe,
so that they know.
maybe if they had a set list, they could get it signed by the venue and have a stamp of the venue with the dates, just something to verify that it actually happened or something like that. Just to kind of make, some of these things are not going to get, half the people at the venue won't even know about it. So, that's it. All right. So moving over to reciprocal things. So the reason we mentioned reciprocal is that, a lot of artists sign up with an international collecting society, like PRS for music, like BMI. This is something I've been recommended to artists for years, So what you mentioned is reciprocal is only for on-ground stuff. Is that correct? So only for when they play at a live music venue in India and the set list has been sent officially, that they have sent it in or whatever it is, then they could get paid from a PRS for music in the UK. But
Yes.
online, whether the music is being played, the money from Facebook or the publishing share from your downloads when you upload music to Spotify, etc., that they cannot get if they are signed to PRS for music.
No, essentially, what I mean is IPRS does not see the first thing is the internet does not have borders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So IPRS will not go out and say we represent 100% of the market here, because those reciprocal arrangements don't exist for online for online public performance or online performance and mechanicals.
Mm-hmm.
So IPRS will only license to a platform or like Facebook. It's directly represented or direct repertoire. So all the Indian members of IPRS or all the members of IPRS in India, their repertoire is what is licensed to a platform like Facebook.
Okay.
So essentially, if you are a member of PRS in the UK and not IPRS here, IPRS will not license your repertoire to a Facebook. PRS in the UK is licensing your repertoire to Facebook.
So, but either which way you get paid, right?
Either which way you get paid. But the problem is when you don't sit in, you're not registered to any society, then you're not getting paid. You're not getting a piece of
So,
this pie.
so one of the things was pros and cons of joining IPRS. If I can join a PRS for music in the UK or a BMI, and I can still collect money from venues, and I can still collect money from my streaming money and my Facebook money and my Instagram money, what's the point of joining IPRS versus a PRS for music or a BMI? What is the pros and cons? Are there any pros and cons, or it's all the same and it doesn't matter?
So there are a few cons of registering. Firstly, you have to ask yourself, where is my music being consumed and publicly performed? And if that is majorly outside India, or even if the 25% of your pie you assume will come from outside of India, you can go ahead and register with other societies. And that could be APRA, AMCOS in Australia, BOOMA in the Netherlands. You can choose SABAM in Belgium, SACEM in France, PRS in the UK, ASCAP and BMI in the US. You can take your pick depending on where you think your music is really going and being publicly performed. And when I say publicly performed, I mean, you also need to think about, is it being played on the radio? Is it being played on TV? Is it on streaming apps?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can answer this question. So there's a specific answer. There's no blanket answer to this question. But think about it like this. So in the event perspective, if you're not signed to IPRS in India, you're signed to PRS in the UK. If, let's say, you were supposed to get 100 rupees from India, what's going to happen is there will be some deductions along the way.
Exchange rate, all that crap.
And also, I mean, for the operating cost
Yes.
of the license here. And then by the time you get the money, the wait periods for you to get the money, IPRS has a different payment cycle. PRS in the UK has a different payment cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on if you're okay on waiting, I would say if you're in the same country where the revenue is accruing, you collect it in that country rather than going out.
Mm-hmm.
But however, if you give it a chance and you feel that it's better to put pressure from abroad and collect it through a society, through a reciprocal arrangement, you can go ahead and do that. It's just that sometimes the timelines differ. You wouldn't get it as fast, or maybe you'll get it quicker because of the pressure.
Yeah.
But those are factors for you to weigh in.
So, I mean, it doesn't really matter where you're based and where you play. It's more about where, if you're majorly playing in India, then it makes sense to sign up with the Indian society. But it doesn't matter even if you are signed with a UK one or a US one, because they all collect from all over. They have deals with other society where, hey, you collect on my behalf, and then we will, go through our banks and then divide it and all that crap. So one of the other main important things that people always wonder is, does IPRS actually pay? I think that's one of the points which it's not about timelines anymore. For Indians, we're so used to waiting for our payment, which is so weird, because any international company, I mean, I work for an international company, I never had to wait for any payment, but I'm so like, hey, that's new. I got it like in a day. Like, what's this? But, we're so used to like waiting. The point is, we're okay with waiting. It's about not getting paid at all. And I think that's one of the things. And I know, I mean, I don't know if IPRS is watching. I'm sorry, but this is a very neutral discussion. But does IPRS pay? Because the last few years before they kind of revamped themselves, they kind of went through a lot of shit and a lot of stuff happened. So what is your opinion? I know we can't guess we don't know, we're guessing, but yeah.
No, so I'd like to answer that question and say that they're paying my clients at least. So
Okay.
I've seen, I look at a lot of royalty statements, and sometimes they ask, it comes in with codes and P10345 and things like that.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's hard to read statements unless you know and you do this on a daily basis.
Sure.
But to understand where the money is coming from, and for my clients, they've been paid even during the lockdown. Some of them have even received the emergency relief and things like that. So I believe IPRS did 2 payments um, in the span of 12 months. And
Okay.
yeah, and essentially they have paid out. If you're not receiving payments, remember there are certain criteria also to receive payment, and there is also something called the minimum royalty that you do receive once you become a member. But
Okay.
you have to be eligible for that. You have to register your works. You have to make sure you're completely in the
Submitting
system. Yeah,
everything.
I will be honest, and I will say that for my clients, there are people that are doing the hard work for them, so they're not doing it themselves. The work that they're receiving money towards has been either a label has gone out and registered that work themselves, and then IPRS has collected the sync share. So when there is
Yeah.
when author composers are by law entitled to 50% of that, which is called the author's share. And IPRS goes out and collects that for sync deals as well. So if a label has done a sync deal on the publishing side, they will collect 50% and then pay that out to the lyricist or composer
Mhm.
who's their member. And I think it's important, number one, just like we discussed, it's important to follow all of those steps. Make sure you register your songs, make sure you're submitting set list, make sure you're letting IPRS know that such deals are being done. And this goes even, so it's not just indie artists, a lot of indie artists do jingles and do ad film
That's
work
it.
and
Yeah.
commissioned work. They also pay out for all of that stuff because that stuff gets
Registered. Yeah.
paid the most,
Yeah.
and they pay out for that as well. But you need to give them complete information,
Mm.
and unless they have that, they're not going to be able to pay out, and they won't think about it this way. They also need to justify why a payment was made,
Mhm.
and this serves as justification. So everything you said about stamping it and getting it signed by the venue owner, all of that counts because
Yeah.
then it's one step more legitimate than it was.
Exactly. So, I mean, just to kind of recap on what we've discussed so far, artists need to realize that it's not about whether it doesn't matter which collecting society you sign up with abroad in India. At the end of the day, the work still has to be done. You can't just become a member. And I'm assuming all of them charge a fee, right? Like a membership fee or something?
Yeah, so IPRS, the last I checked, charged 1,200 rupees for a lyricist or composer to become a member,
One
and
time?
2,000 one-time fee, and 2,200 rupees for a publisher to become a member.
Okay. All
And
right. And tell me something. So this is, I'm sure people will if we don't have a publisher, as an independent artist, we don't have a publisher, then we in essence become our own publisher.
yes,
So does that
so
mean that we get both the shares from IPRS? So
yes,
in essence, artists who are independent and don't have a publisher, if they're not signed to IPRS, they're missing two chunks from the publisher share and the artist share. So
yeah.
that's still money that we're just letting it go, right?
So that's a great way to put it. It
I
sounds
mean,
very convincing. Yeah,
it's simple. Like if I'm
yeah.
supposed to get two shares, I'm getting zero shares. That seems like a very stupid deal. So I should do something to get both shares, you know?
So essentially, right now you're just collecting. So we broke the song down into three parts. You're collecting on the master side. You're not collecting on the publishing or on the performance side, or the performer's right side. But essentially, on the master side also, you're not um, you're not collecting for where your work is being publicly performed. The master is being played. So, for example, if you're a producer, and all our friends, Ritika, need to listen to this because none of them register with any societies. They don't register their works.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they all play each other's music,
For sure.
and
Yeah.
they're playing it at clubs, and they're playing it at festivals, at after parties, wherever,
Yeah.
wherever they're playing. They're playing these songs, and essentially, um, what's happening is no one's getting paid for this music, and all of this money. What happens is, and I'll answer this question before it's even asked. And I said, societies hold on to this money for 3 years and they wait for someone to sign up. And if that person doesn't sign up for 3 years, that goes back into the main pot and is distributed amongst everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so essentially, the big guys are getting all the money that's owed to you, and that's an even better. I mean, an even bigger reason for you to sign up and register your work.
Yeah, because we don't want the big guys to get all the money. We want the little guys to get all the money. All right. So now, because you touched upon sync, so I just want to kind of explain to people what sync is. Sync is basically synchronization or sync licensing. What happens is if you have a song that is placed on an ad, that is placed in a TV show, that's placed in a movie, that is a sync licensing deal. So if you distribute through CD Baby, you might have seen an optional sync deal where it goes into our sync library and we help you, we help pitch to different people. And every so often you'll see a CD Baby artist on Stranger Things or one of these Netflix or HBO shows. So you get that. Now, if go to a label, a lot of labels ask you to sign over their sync part as well. In order for you to kind of collect on your sync money, should you not sign that over to anybody? Is it good? I mean, or is that doesn't matter? Like if tomorrow you are making a song you have composed a song and you're giving it to, a music, like an ad film or whatever. Is it better to just be like, okay, take it all. I'm just taking a flat fee, one-time fee. It's yours, basically giving away all your rights to it. Or is it better to at least hold on to that, that publishing part or the sync part or whatever you want to call it, so that you can get money from IPRS on it?
Essentially, what you are doing is you're giving them a sync license for that song that you've composed. Mm-hmm. And I think, if I understand correctly, the difference you're saying is commissioned work versus just giving them a license and keeping all the copyright with yourself. Is that the difference?
Yeah. Basically, I mean, what happens is people, a lot of times they'll get approached, even if it's their own song. A lot of times people will get approached saying, hey, we like a song, we want to put it in our ad, our this. Will you like to give us all the rights? So like what happens when you're like, yeah, take all the rights, mujhe 1 lakh mil gaya. You know what I mean? Like, is that a good deal? Or should you be like, no, I want this much money, but I still want to hold on to my publishing rights so I can register this work with IPRS?
I would say the latter. You should try and hold on to your publishing rights as much as possible. I would say hold on to your master's right as much as possible. So if you let me break it down for you. When there is a sync, right? What is a sync? I'll break that down even further. The moment you take audio and add a video element to it and fix that in time, that is synchronization. Mm-hmm. Now it's very different for when you think about YouTube. A lot of people. I used to listen to music on YouTube. Don't make fun of me. But essentially, I listen to...
Majority of people in India listen to music on YouTube. That is where it's consumed the most.
Yeah, I'm not the only one. So, yeah. So essentially, but a bunch of songs on YouTube, you'll find just the artwork and the song, right? It's not a real video. Mm-hmm. Those are defined as art tracks. So it's not, they don't really consider them a sync. But everything else where you take music and you put it to a video or visual, even karaoke is considered a sync.
Yeah.
Now, I'll break down sync for you. And if the master or the recording is being used, you need a master license. So a license from the person who owns the master, as well as a license from the publisher. So sync is not just on one side. That's important to know. You need to know that it's on both sides. You need the license of the publisher.
And if you're not you don't have a publisher, then the artists themselves become their own publisher.
Yes, they are de facto. And the second is, if you are recreating the song or just performing the song, performing your own version of the music and lyrics, not using the recording, you need a license from the publisher to do that. So essentially, if you let me take a song, and I was just listening to this yesterday. This is a song called "The Little Things You Do," and that was, I think, Mikey McCleary and Anushka Manchanda. And I was listening to that song, and I said I definitely know this song from some ad somewhere, but it has a certain amount of recall value. So the real decision comes down to on whether you should give them all rights or not is how far they're going to take that song. And in that case, you weigh in keeping those rights as opposed to giving them. Because remember, when you may grant a certain set of rights, so sync, you may give them ownership of the masters and the publishing, but what happens is you'll still collect your author's share, your 50%. And this is true for, this is what was the major change in 2012, right? All the lyricists and composers of Bollywood and all these ad films, all of that, they started getting this author's share. And they don't have ownership of that publishing, but they're still collecting that share. The same thing for sync. IPRS is going to the label and saying, you did this sync deal, you owe the author composer this much. And I've received, or my clients have received those kind of payments during the lockdown as well. So it is a major source of revenue, because labels would go out and do these deals. You may not have that arsenal or the toolkit within your toolbox to go out and put yourself out there, license that catalog, license that song. But these labels are doing it, publishers are doing it. And that's why you need a society to go out and collect on your behalf. And that's what in long form, that is my answer to this question.
So in essence, basically try to keep as much of your rights as possible, either which way, register with any kind of collecting society, because there is some money there that you are not collecting, basically. And that's the gist of this particular topic. So let's move on. Got a lot of questions. Sorry, you had something?
Yeah. So there's one distinction that I think needs to be clear. When you think about sync, it's on the input end. So if let's take the example of uploading content. In order for you to have a song in a visual or a video, you need to have a sync license. In order for a platform to play that, or in order for a radio station, not a radio station, sorry, a TV station to play that, they need to pay public performance. So you're earning two. You're earning both sides. You're earning on the input side as well as the output side. So that's why it's even more important, or you'll get the sync from the deal being done. You'll also get the public performance each time that is being played on air. And I think when I was saying boycott radio,
I was just going to get to the radio part, because that's one. See, so basically, I mean, people need to understand that IPRS does collect from TV shows and stuff as well. So if your music is used on an ad or a TV show or whatever, there is an element, some payment that is there that you could be making if you're registered with IPRS, So let's go to radio. I know we've got a bunch of questions, and guys, I'm seeing all your questions. If you have any more questions, just type it in. I'm going to either go through it if it's already being covered in our Q&A, otherwise we will answer all of them as much as possible before it's time to go drink. But hey man, it's indie all the way. So let's talk about radio. Now, I mean, every time an indie artist, and I'm talking from an indie perspective because, hey, that's all I know. Every time an indie artist gets approached by a radio station or approaches a radio station, they make them sign this NOC saying you're waiving some rights and you're not everything. What's the deal with radio? And, I like how you're like boycott radio. Tell us a bit about this.
So essentially, I wanted to do this a while ago, and I think as a kid, my favorite station was 94.3. I used to listen to the show called Jaggu and Tarana. The show was called something else, but they were the RJs, and I really liked that show. They played nice music, but then then I learned that radio is refusing to pay the author composers, and they're refusing to pay IPRS. And this has been litigated for a while. There was a case called Aditya Pandey, and that's what we were discussing, last weekend, on that webinar. And essentially, radio is not paying the author composer, right? They're paying a limited amount, and some of them are paying masters, some of them are not paying anything. But essentially, there's this dispute, and the court kind of settled it and said, look, you don't need to pay the author composer. And right now, it's so weird, because, and that's why I say I was thinking maybe this should be started as a formal campaign of boycott radio in India,
Well, I mean,
because
if
all
they're
these.
supposed to pay and they're not paying, I think we need to. I mean, what the hell? That's our money.
Yeah, and but here you have this case. So the court has come in and said, okay, you know what? No, it's only the master side that needs to be paid, and
Why?
that's what IPRS.
But why is it that our laws in India are so like opposite to everything else in the world? I mean, like I remember on the webinar, the one point that that stuck out was the gentleman from IPRS was like, "Don't compare us to the West," and I was like, "Why the hell not?" Like we want to
So
be we call ourselves a next superpower and all this crap, so why not compare ourselves to the most advanced country and be like, how do we get there, right?
so I would say we can compare ourselves to whoever we'd like to compare ourselves. We need to understand the ground realities.
Mm-hmm.
Um if we compare ourselves to the US, let me tell you, from a public performance level, is not too great there anyway.
True.
Um, and the same problem that you face. Like for example, if you were an indie artist um, in the US, and the royalties that I was talking about here, and I was saying you'll get a minimum royalty, or if you submit your set list, you'll get money from there. The US pays that kind of royalty out very differently. You need to be in the top 300 grossing tours of the year to receive money on events and concert royalty, on events and concert public performance revenue.
Okay.
So the small guys get nothing essentially till you make it to that top 300, right? And
Yeah.
then you start getting those royalties, which are huge. But essentially, you could be playing, and there's this entire campaign. I'd written it down a week ago and kept my note here, but it's still here because I use the same table to stream. But there's this campaign, you should check it out. It's called Broken Record by a gentleman called Tom Gray, and I believe he's on the board of PRS in the UK. And there's an issue that he highlights of essentially when music is being consumed on a Spotify or an Apple Music. What's happening is if I'm paying $10 and you're paying $10, Ritnika,
Mhm.
you could be listening to 500 songs and I could be playing one song on repeat.
Yeah.
All of your money will go to that one song that I'm listening to, and all of my money will go to that one song that I'm listening to.
Wow.
And this is essentially because they're also paying out with on the basis of what was listened to the most, and not to, it's not a user centric payment system. So it's not I paid $10. The $10 should be divided amongst what I've listened to.
Yeah.
It's what is streamed the most, and uh,
That's why the
from
bigger
the
artists get a bigger chunk of the money,
exactly
So when we
that
say, oh, why are they getting it? Because they're getting, more people are listening to it. So if you want your music to be, to get more money, promote the shit out of it. Like, hello, simple as that, right?
create bots that sit and listening to that song on loop every single day.
Pura din, day and night, right?
Yeah.
So basically, in India, radios do not pay out any IPRS royalties or whatever at the moment.
Yeah, they're not paying that out. And I would say this has been an issue in different countries. I think that this is our time where this issue gets debated and things like that. You look at Western countries also. I have no problem taking Western examples or Eastern examples, whatever you may do. Let's take the example of China and say, oh, we're so far ahead of China. But
True.
essentially, I mean, they can look at other jurisdictions, and we can look at other jurisdictions and look at how they've answered those problems. But and even to what you said about the law, Ritnik, I think that the law says what it says, and where I think we're interpreting the law quite funky right now. Even the court, and I would go back to say, how much knowledge of IP is the judiciary really getting? How many plays are they watching? How much of music are they actually consuming? Are they thinking of this process of idea to expression the way I explained it today, and things like that? I think that's the real problem, not that we're comparing ourselves or anything else, or that our laws are archaic. I
Yeah.
think people need to. And I thought a campaign like like boycott radio would really, catch some eyeballs and
I think
make me
we
an
should start
influencer on
that, man.
Instagram.
Right from after this webinar, guys. Hashtag boycott radio.
Boycott radio.
Damn it,
You heard it here
I
first.
actually have associations with a few radio stations. Guys, don't hate me.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So moving on, the big topic, live streaming. Now, I know you guys did that webinar last time, and I know it was, lot of lawyers talking about a lot of legal stuff, and it was great because I know you guys spoke about some bigger issues that kind of need to be discussed and hopefully eventually get some answers out of it. But from an indie perspective, from the everyday perspective, I think most of us and most artists kind of got lost. They were just like, what is the end goal? So let's just make it very, very simple. The IPRS is collecting money for live streaming.
Yes.
Yes. So they are expecting if you have.
Let me answer this
right,
way. They're collecting right now money from Facebook for live stream.
Okay. All right. So right now they're collecting money from Facebook. What is the new? I know the new law. They have now taken suggestions and they're saying things have not. Certain things are now being re-evaluated, like the costs and all of that stuff. Right after things have gone awry. So could you explain what exactly is going on now and how does it affect the independent artists? Because from the independent artist point of view, they are the composers, they are the lyricists, they are the performers. They don't have any publishing firms. It's just them doing everything.
All right. So let me try and get to the reasoning behind all of this. But many people have, and this is based on my own logic, reading between the lines and trying to see the logic of the ratio behind it, as well as the press releases that have come out and what I've gathered from direct indirect conversations. I would say, so number one, to answer the question of Facebook is paying you, why should this be the separate tariff?
Mm-hmm.
I think the answer, this is not my answer to that question, but I feel this is the proposed answer to the question, which is Facebook is paying for user generated content type of usages of music. So if there are users, so if we create a bot today, Ritmika, and that's taking Saregama songs and creating music videos with memes or matching them to random videos and putting soundtracks into them, the fee that IPRS is collecting from Facebook covers that kind of usage.
Okay.
When it comes to, I would say, pages, it gets a little more complicated, because if you see company pages, or if you see and that is free usages, right? No, there's no payment being exchanged for that kind of usage, user generated content.
Yeah.
The problem arises when there's money behind some kind of usage or some kind of transaction or some kind of content.
Mm-hmm.
And what IPRS is saying is that needs to be treated differently. You can't treat them both the same, and I kind of agree with that, because if someone is receiving money for creating some type of content, then the author composer should also receive a piece of that money. And people may ask, why is this? Because essentially, if you look at even a free concert, let's say it's a free concert, okay, something like a car free day, something like that, where people don't have to pay an entry fee to get in. Maybe I'm giving the wrong example, but we'll find out once I complete the example. But essentially, if you think about it, there are no tickets being sold, so it's not really a paid concert in that sense. But IPRS still can ask for a piece of the sponsorship sales, a piece of revenue. They don't really say, we want a piece of the ticket. They always say revenue, and there's a percentage of revenue that is paid in. Now, Facebook on platforms like those are paying for the kind of free consumption or the free usage of content. the moment you put a brand into it, the moment you put a ticketed event that is being live streamed on Facebook, this creates a lot of complication, right? So, for example, we could have ticketed this thing on a Book My Show on an Insider, collected money from people. You could have been, live streaming music right now. I could have been dancing on my end, and people have paid tickets for this. This is being streamed on Facebook. Um, Now there is a certain amount of monetization that's happening here, and I would also say, if you look at data that comes out, I don't know if they will release it, but if you look at a lot of the events that are happening today, the most of them are happening on platforms like Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Zoom is a lot harder to license for an
Yeah.
IPRS, because um, they don't have blanket licenses with labels, so they don't pay labels upfront
Mm-hmm.
money, because they're not that type of a platform. Essentially, right? They don't know this notice and take down can't really work, because you create a room and the room exists only for the duration of the meeting. So
Yeah.
when are you going to send the notice? When are you going to take it down? Things like that.
Yeah.
That occurs. So I think that answers this whole question of, if Facebook has paid, why should event organizers,
Have to pay.
or if the artist is the organizer themselves, why should they pay? And this is my reasoning for it, mixed with maybe that's the official position as well. But this is my logic for that. We
Mm-hmm.
can argue about it. I don't know how much that will change, but yes, you should put in official representations. You should send in your comments. Please note, Facebook post, or maybe if you tag them in your Facebook post, they'll see it. But better to send an email always. Better to notify them officially and say, this is my stand on it. Come together as musicians, come together as associations, send official stances on it. And I believe they would listen after a while. And
Well, right
I
now they
say,
haven't, they've said clearly that they're still taking suggestions and they haven't finalized anything. So if artists and companies, want to have their say in this, or at least try to have their say in it, now would be the time where you kind of reach out to them on, via official email. I'm sure you can find something online, or, on their website or whatever. So from what I've understood is that they are going to collect money if it is a sponsored event on Facebook, sponsored stream or sponsored event or whatever, or if it is paid, like if it is ticketed, or donations or any kind of thing.
yeah.
Now, if now for
Donations,
it,
I'm not,
sorry.
sorry, Ritika, donations, I'm not so sure,
Okay, so they haven't
because they're not,
clarified what happens with
they haven't
donations.
clarified.
But I think they said that if it's for a particular cause, then it
Yeah.
might be waived. But if it's donation for an artist themselves, I'm assuming it would be paid then. Like, 'cause it's not a cause, right? Then
Who
it's
is
a
to judge?
it's a gray
Who
area,
is to judge?
guys. We should make a musician charity, and every artist should do a fun gig paid event
I
for the
think you
musician charity.
I think you let the cat out of the bag. You shouldn't have put this on the record. You should have put it on WhatsApp groups or Facebook groups.
Nah, it's cool. So, yeah, that would be really shady. I can't do that. So, basically, if you are a member of IPRS and if you are doing your own paid event of some kind, you will still, as an artist, if you're doing the event yourself, you will still have to pay whatever fee they've said. They haven't finalized the actual fee anymore. They're opening or discussing it or whatever, or if they finalize it, I don't know. But either which way, but because you're a member of IPRS, you will get your share somehow calculated and you will make money off of it as well, right?
Yeah, so I think you need to look at this. So there are two perspectives. Yes, the member perspective is important. You need to look at this from a repertoire perspective. And now we're going into licensing for an event. You need to look at what kind of content you're using or playing, and who owns that content. So essentially, if you're an independent artist and you are the lyricist, you're the composer, you're the performer, and you own the master, um, I would say in that scenario, and you're a member of IPRS, to me it doesn't make much sense that you would pay to collect your own money. It doesn't make much sense,
It does.
but it doesn't.
But we have to, right? That's the current deal.
Unless that is what is being reworked as well, and I think that would be reworked to an extent. I can't confirm it, but I'm pretty I think that will be reworked to allow members who who are performing their own lyrics and composition
Yeah.
to perform it and kind of on an
And
income
whether it's
themselves.
sponsored or on, or or paid or
Yeah.
whatever.
It gets a little more complicated when there's a publisher involved, Ritika, because if and I see, just a note to everyone posting questions in the chat, there's a separate Q&A
Yeah.
window. Put your questions there so that we don't miss out anything.
Yeah.
But also I saw some questions regarding, the publisher share, and publishers take 50% of your work and things like that.
Mhm.
I think you need to look at it as, this is a part of the pie that you're not collecting right now.
Mhm.
And publishers put in a lot of hard work. They don't, some publishing administrators or some publishers may charge you an upfront fee, but most of them work on a percentage basis with you. And that involves, there's a lot of work, registering your songs, monitoring it, going out and pitching your catalog, things like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
So
work
just
that.
to interrupt, sorry, just to let everybody know, publishers kind of help you get sync deals, placing it on movies, films, like they're basically trying to sell. And if you are a singer songwriter, a songwriter, if you have composed the music, that's when you, or you've written the lyrics, that's when you can approach a publisher. If you're just the performer, you've just sung it, then that you don't own that part of the song, so you can't approach. It's mainly for, so if tomorrow you are a great songwriter but you can't sing, you would go ahead and instead of getting a label deal, you might consider getting a publishing deal so that they can sell your songs, and other performers, other singers like Madonna, whoever, can you sing your song. Like I like to use the example of that Aerosmith song, I don't want to miss a thing. That's actually been written by Diane Warren, who's a really famous songwriter. So you can basically just sell your music to be sung by other people. So sorry, continue, because people might not
Uh,
understand the role.
yeah, I think that's a great example. Even musicians like Elton John,
Mhm.
artists like Elton John, they they tip their hats over to their songwriters, and I forget the songwriter's name in this
Bernie,
instance.
Bernie Taupin.
But yeah, but I
Yeah,
think if you watch Rocket Man, you also see that kind of relationship, and there are
yeah,
scenes where they do those kind of deals with the labels and things
yeah.
like that. But essentially, yeah, what you're saying is right. And coming to that percentage of 50%, publishers will really help you collect that. I was saying it gets sticky when it comes to you have a publisher, you're performing your own music,
Mhm.
um, and maybe you're getting paid, maybe you aren't. But if you're getting paid, think about it. Maybe your publisher who's putting in that work also needs to get paid a certain amount. So in that case,
Of course.
maybe you'd want it to go through IPRS, so your publisher gets paid for for their work also, and then you get paid
Mhm.
the remaining part. It from an economic model point of view, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Essentially, paying money to get that money back to you unless it's coming to you with interest.
yeah,
Um, and now, when it comes to, I think it says non-IPRS members are exempt from these rules. If it's your own content that you're playing,
yeah.
you're performing, then yes. If it is content that IPRS represents, you need to pay
And
up,
it's
um,
paid. And it's a
and
paid.
it's paid.
Yeah,
You would need to pay up.
yeah.
But Ritika, also now IPRS may be saying, for non-paid performances,
Hmm.
they won't collect. But this is not the case for other societies around the world. So if you are playing international music, what is likely to happen is you'll get a notice and take down.
Okay.
And you can't. So everyone was focused on IPRS and this whole tariff, and I was trying to remind everyone that, look, the music that you're probably performing, if they're covers, I see a lot of Facebook groups where there are 12,000 people and there's a guy performing every Sunday and things like
Yeah.
that. And he's playing the greatest hits and music that I love, but essentially it's not being picked up because content ID is not that strong in terms of
Yeah.
live performances.
Yeah.
But there will be notice and takedown. And remember,
But tell me something, the fact that Facebook has a deal in India, and Facebook, I'm assuming, has international deals as well. If somebody does do the cover and it's a free cover, wouldn't they automatically get paid from Facebook? So why should that get a strike down notice?
but that's assuming all the music that we're playing is licensed to Facebook, and
Ah,
that's not the case. So that's what remember when we were just doing the warm up before we joined in. YouTube took down its music policy database, and
yeah,
I was crying because all my YouTube creator clients and comedians, whoever would use music, they would send me a set list. I would check it up and say, what is likely or most probable to happen in case you use music in a video. That policy database would tell you whether it's, there's YouTube had an opt-in policy. Facebook also has an opt-in policy, so you can choose to license to Facebook. I'm worried about in cases where it's not, it's not licensed to Facebook. Labels flat out tell Facebook also, we will put this catalog into your content ID system. If it's recognized, it needs to be taken down immediately. We don't want it being used. We don't want UGC content to be created around our music. And that was the case with YouTube as well. There is a lot of, and YouTube did it three ways. With a content ID claim, either you would be notified. You would be notified, and that you can't use the song. It would be taken down immediately. The content owner could keep it up and let it be there, or they could keep it up and take all the ad sales revenue.
yeah, yeah.
And
So just to kind of sum this up, because I know we're running out of time and we have a lot of questions, which I would like to answer, because I know the last webinar, you guys couldn't get to the questions. The current rule as it stands, and we believe there will be some changes to it as they're working on it, is that if you have any kind of money associated with live streaming, whether it's sponsorship, whether it is ticketed, and if whether you are yourself are the event organizer as an artist, or whether you are a company, you will have to pay that licensing fee, whatever it is. If you are not a member of IPRS and you're playing only your own music, you are fine. If you are a member of IPRS and you're playing only your music, you might be fine, you might not be fine. They're trying to figure that out, meaning you're fine, but you might have to pay and you might get that money back or something.
not fine.
Yeah.
You may have to pay the license fee, not
Yes.
fine.
So that's what you might be fine, as you might not have to pay, or you might have to pay. But right now, as it stands, you will have to pay. So, but you will hopefully get the money back. And if you are not a member of any collecting society, or even if you are a member of a collecting society, and you are paying and playing covers, it may or may not get taken down depending on that particular cover song and the deal they have with which organization.
Yeah.
So that is how it stands currently. So what do you advise for independent artists? Do you think they should join if they're doing live? I mean, let's be honest, next 6 months, it's going to be live streaming. Should they wait and see what the new deal for artists are, if they're doing their own covers, if they're a member of IPRS, and then decide to join? Or do you think that either which way they should join IPRS or not join IPRS? What do you think?
Wow.
इतना आसान थोड़ी ना होगा.
I usually start sessions like this saying, I am a lawyer, but not necessarily your lawyer. So I'm sharing my opinion, but
yeah, this is not an official. This is us discussing our point. I mean, I can tell you what I feel. How about this? I feel like if I was still managing artists, which I've done for about 10 years of my life, I would wait and watch for the next couple of weeks to see what IPRS says is the final law. You know what I mean? When it comes to, if you're a member and you are streaming, you're playing a ticketed show and it's your own music. So that's what I would do. Just wait and watch for a couple of weeks and kind of see what's going on, and then decide that, say if it's only 2,000 rupees or 500 rupees, and you will eventually get it back, then maybe the benefits outweigh the cost, because there are so many other benefits, right? You are collecting that publishing royalty that you are already missing out on, that the big pie like you're talking about, right? But if the cost is 20,000 And then I'll be like, screw the pie. I'm just going to kind of keep my royalty myself or whatever, right? So I think it's one of those. Do you kind of feel that's a good approach to kind of wait and watch and see what they have to say?
So I would say essentially, just a second. Sorry, I wanted to make sure I have enough battery to last the
Yeah.
session. Uh, so essentially, what I would say is, yes, it would be advisable to kind of wait it out till the tariff comes out. Feel free to send in your opinions. In the meantime, I would say your voices should be heard, but collect all the data that we were talking about in the meantime, all your set lists, the venues that you played at, have conversations with those promoters.
Even the past ones, right? Whatever you can
For the
get.
past 3 years, I would say, um, buy a whiteboard, write it on your wall, and write down all the gigs you played, or an Excel spreadsheet on your laptop. List down all the gigs and where you played them at. Try to put together the set lists and keep that data together. And then when you do join, you at least have that data. So you're not, uh,
You have
when
to
I said
start
that,
late. Yeah, you
yeah,
can
yeah,
do the work and
do,
be prepared.
do that right now, and then you can decide you want to join IPRS, you want to join another society, join wherever, give them that data,
Yeah,
make those claims,
yeah. Because at the
and then
end
you
of
have
the
some pension.
because at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, and that's a good way of putting it. Because if your music is playing online and wherever, there is that one, whether you're streaming, whether it's, you're still missing out a chunk of your money. Like,
Yeah,
so, let's say you're doing a lot of live streams now, but let's be honest, let's hope and pray COVID disappears. Like, hello, it needs to go away. Then we're gonna be back gigging and playing, and what about then? You're still missing out on that, that royalty that you could be getting from the venues and all of that. So,
of course.
maybe you don't want to join now and want to join in a few months, but either which way, eventually you're still not claiming all your money, and that
I,
make you, it's important to do that.
I
All
think
right.
there are lots of benefits also like that. So IPRS did a relief fund, an emergency relief fund, and I believe a regular relief fund for its members as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, so the members, but you had to be a member for a certain amount of years, and
But
you
people
could
got
claim.
money because they were struggling.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yes,
really nice.
they
Yeah.
did that. There's also a system of a minimum royalty that IPRS pays out for if you meet the criteria. So it's important to be a part of these societies also, because you need to think of these royalties not just as added income but as your pension plan. And that's
Yeah.
how songwriters. There are songwriters avidly go out and
Mhm.
enforce their rights, because they could have written, they're living off of a song written 60 years ago. Um, and it's due to them, and they're collecting those if they're hits. For
Mhm.
example, the Beatles catalog is one of the highest paying catalogs today.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got a lot of questions. So should we just kind of dig right in and kind of answer them, one at a time? So I'm going to ask the question and you can answer. How about that? All right. So the
Yeah.
first question is from Pragnya. What are the pros and cons of registering our music with IPRS in the current scenario? I believe we've answered this quite well. So Pragnya, I hope you've already understood this. If not, this is going to be available on Facebook, so you can rewatch it, but we have kind of done that. Then we've got, I heard that registering with IPRS restricts indie artists opportunities of video play or TV channels and radio opportunities, or radio and TV channels don't want to pay IPRS. But we've kind of also covered this. TV stations still pay IPRS, right?
To an extent, I believe to an extent they're paying. I'm not sure. I would have to confirm. I'm not sure to what extent they're paying. I believe there are some who are paying and some who are not.
Okay. But is it one of, like, so if at the end, if you are still signed to IPRS and the TV station doesn't want to pay, they might make you sign an NOC, basically.
I would say don't sign those NOCs, because you're not. What is the use? And I mean,
But then they may not agree to play your music on the radio.
but I mean, it's that simple. That simple philosophy of um, getting paid for a gig or getting exposure for a gig.
Oh yeah.
The
We
producers
do, yeah. So sign the NOC if you want exposure on radio.
exposure.
Don't sign the NOC if you don't want exposure and want money.
I would say, you come bring it to a point where it's full-fledged boycott radio. They have nothing, nothing left to play, or we come up with our own radio station, which is too expensive, but
Which
we
is
come up
called
with something.
streaming, man. Come on, come to CD Baby. We'll release your music.
Yeah, but you come up with something like that, something like a box out FM, or where you can play real independent music,
Mhm.
and artists get paid out of it. That's the real model to follow. So I would say it's really your personal choice. Why are you giving them your music if you're not getting paid for it? If it's exposure and you really need the exposure, I guess go ahead. But otherwise, man, it's sacrilege.
All right. As an indie musician who writes, composes, and performs, do we register with both IPRS and ISRA?
Yes.
Yes.
So IPRS for your lyricist and composer side, ISRA for your performer, as in your singing side. Um, musicians should also, musicians also have a certain amount of performers right, but there is not. I don't believe there is a society that represents and enforces their rights that way, the way ISRA does.
All right. So we actually have a question on Facebook, just extending from this, talking about the role of ISRA. So basically, ISRA just collects the performance rights, if you are just a singer. So you get a
Yes.
piece of the public performance, basically, right? And this is
Yes.
from where? Just the venues or from everywhere?
So right now, ISRA isn't collecting as much. I believe their last annual report stated about 2.5 crores.
That's a lot of
And
that's a lot of money.
No, but essentially
I
for
know.
all their members, and
True. They're big guys
they're
as well. Yeah.
yeah, and but it's the same way. They don't want to spend too much money on litigation and getting people to pay in, as in any organization, like even IPRS. Let me put it this way: IPRS is not going to spend 10 lakh rupees to recover 10,000 rupees in a tariff that you owe them, right? They're going to collect from the people who will pay. They'll probably set an example with taking down the big guy, fining the big guy,
Mhm.
but essentially, ISRA will be collecting a larger chunk of the pie soon.
All right, cool. If I sign a contract with an international collaborator for 50-50 rights to co-produce songs, do we need to register them for collection on IPRS, or will the international society they are registered with collect for them? So I guess it depends on the collaborator, right?
So you don't. The collaborator will register with their society, and that's fine. You register with your society, and the money
Yes.
will be split that way.
Yeah. So each of you have to register with your own society, whether you're in the US, whether it's an international or an Indian one, and then they will collect from everywhere for you.
Yeah.
All right.
There are multiple. So if you see organizations like STIM, a lot of the songwriters and producers are registered with STIM in Sweden, and they collect money. The artists are in America, or the artists are elsewhere in Europe, and it works like this. So it does work.
All right. Is there a membership fee associated with joining the IPRS? I think you've already mentioned that there is. Is what, 1,500 or 1,800 or something?
1,200
Sorry,
rupees
1,200.
for an artist, and 2,200 rupees for a publisher.
Okay.
Last I checked.
Yeah. Hi guys, does the IPRS collect from Radio FM? We've already answered this. And if the NOC asks for radio play, should we sign it? Yeah, we've already answered this. It's a personal choice. If it's just for, you wouldn't get paid for it. So again, it's your choice. I understand. You see, I get it. Like there's some artists who are so fresh, who just want people to hear their music. So if that's the case, maybe, I know boycott is a big thing, but until Rafael starts this movement where people start boycotting radio, it's a very personal choice till then what to do. So
I think Amit is also listening, and I saw you
I saw
chatting with
he
him.
raised his hand. I was waiting for his question. Amit, man, where are you?
Amit, I want to start this movement.
Yeah. All right. The IPRS website doesn't have a clear place where a musician needs to register on their website.
I will put in that link here. It's quite clear. I will put in that link and type this answer.
All right,
You can move
perfect.
to the next one.
All right, cool. Maybe you can put it in the chat as well so everybody can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How can independent artists, small venues submit set lists for royalties to be tracked? And what's the general payout time for these royalties? Hey, Varun.
I believe we covered the first part. The second part is general payout time. Is I believe there is an annual payout that does happen. So the for the year, um, it ha- I the distribution scheme really talks about when it is paid out. I believe it's paid out at the financial year end, but the collection basis is Jan to December. There is one annual payout. Pretty sure about that.
So just to kind of, because he's talking about independent artists, so we're saying independent artists should collect their set list, should collect whatever, as much information that can be verified so that they can submit it. Venues directly have to kind of also submit playlists as well, right? Which they don't do, but technically they're supposed to.
Both should. I think both should.
So that they can be
That's
verified and cross-checked
yeah.
and all
That
that fun stuff.
yeah. They'll be verified. Otherwise, me and my bot on Facebook will submit set lists on all your behalf and take all your.
Okay, can an artist manager help their artist register with IPRS and collect the same for them? How does she, who's a manager, benefit from them? I'm going to answer this one. Only a songwriter, or a composer or whoever can sign with IPRS. You as a manager, which I have done before, can help them with the paperwork. But how do you benefit from it? Well, if you understand how managers work, managers make 15% of everything an artist makes, not just gig money. So technically, you are entitled to 15% of everything the artist makes. But that is how it's supposed to happen in reality. But if you're wondering if you can get paid directly from IPRS, the answer is no. Right, Rafael?
So I think if you are as a manager trying to be a publisher, I would not. It's
I don't
you
think they
need to.
should bother. It's too much
Yeah.
work for them to bother. Yeah.
Yeah. Then in that case, but no, you should get your
Technically, no.
artist to
It has
register.
nothing to do, it's a songwriter thing, but technically, as a manager, you're entitled to 15% of everything they make, keeping in mind that you actually do the work and do more than just get them gigs. All right. All right. This is my pet peeve, like manager versus booking agent. All right. Can you register for IPRS if you're already registered to another publishing society?
Yes, you can. So there are many artists, many of my clients assigned to two societies, sometimes three. What they do is it's important to restrict certain rights by territory to the society. So essentially, if you have two societies, there should be one society collecting for. So if I were to say PRS and IPRS, and I'm signed to both, I would have IPRS for India and PRS for the rest of the world,
So
and
is
that's how
that
I would divide
actually,
them.
I actually did not know this. So you can restrict territories with a collecting society? Oh,
You
that
can.
makes so much
I,
sense. All right, guys, sign to PRS Music for World and IPRS for India. You're done.
yeah, but that you take that call depending on how your music is being
Of course.
consumed, and
Yeah.
that's what most publishers will advise you on. Or if you have enough data from organizations like CD Baby, or you can see where your music is being consumed the most.
Yeah.
And I think I was watching. I think Naveen or someone posted this. It was a documentary on this one rock band that went and was touring Europe and was doing shows for 10,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in that case, it would make sense to become a member of PRS, because PRS can collect that money from all the societies there,
Yeah.
um, and you get it directly from them.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. If a PRS if an art if a PRS registered IPRS registered artist is doing a ticketed show by themselves using a tool like Zoom, who's responsible for license, and who's responsible for payout, there is no license or payout with Zoom, right?
So if you're doing it on Zoom, I mean, you're the organizer yourself. If it's a ticketed show, you're going to be responsible for getting the licenses. And
But do
how
you
does the
need
Royal?
to get a license?
Yeah, because you're ticketing it,
But it's
right?
on Zoom, right? It's not on social media. It's closed. So
But
you still
it's
have to.
public. See, public performance is any performance where there's more than two people. Um, so
So
it
it's
would be
still
a
a
public performance, even if it's on Zoom.
And how do the royalty payout work? The same way you would have, I mean, they wouldn't, if you are the artist, then again, you be a member of IPRS, you do the same process, right?
So essentially, I think what Ishan is asking relates more to how
How do you
relates
verify?
more to to the distribution scheme, and I don't think IPRS has put out a particular distribution scheme for this. There is one for events, and there is one for online streaming, non-interactive streaming, but there is nothing specific right now for a distribution scheme for these online events, and I think they will come out with something regarding this.
So once we register with IPRS, what's the rules for online performances and payments? I think we've already covered this. If we keep a non-ticketed concert but let people donate any amount they want, does the IPRS still get paid a percentage? So if the donation is going to the artist and not to a charity.
Non-ticket donate any amount they want.
Oh, one more thing. I think we forgot to mention this, that IPR has also stated that things which are in public performance, which is, already things like folk songs, religious songs, they don't get charged, because they're already in
Yeah,
public performance,
and
public domain, sorry.
I would say, there were some jokes being made about what IPRS put out and saying, they're stating the obvious. But let me throw some light on that perspective since you brought it up, Ritika. I'm taking a lot of time doing this, um, but but essentially, if you think about folk songs or you think about devotional songs or classical songs, now the lyrics and the composition may not have you may not have copyright in them. You may, because they are public domain works, but and assuming they're public domain works, and if you talk about, see, devotional as a genre and folk is also a genre, right? But if you think about it, and this is the way a lot of publishing really works, is they still claim for arrangement, right? The arrangement of the lyrics and composition can be an original. You may have arranged it originally. So in that case, to give you an example of arrangement, I would say postmodern jukebox, right? They're taking lyrics and composition that, or maybe not composition to that extent, but they're arranging the song very differently for each of the songs. They're all popular songs, arranging the song very differently. They would have copyright in that arrangement.
Yeah.
So, and arrangements are paid out by societies at, I believe, 1/4 or 1/5. So that is why it's important that IPRS puts out clarifications like this to say that
what was it? Traditional music and religious stuff is not covered.
Devotional, folk, and classical.
Yeah.
Which I take a leap further and say, okay, if they're not charging for this, then they're also not paying for this in that sense. So they're not paying an arrangement in that sense.
Okay. All right. With the donation part, it's a yes, right? If it's a donation for self, then it would become just like any other paid show. So you might as well put a fee on it or whatever you want to call it. If it's a donation for maybe a charity event, then there would be no charge.
I don't know what will happen, but let me give you examples in the past where I would compare this scenario to a busker sitting on a street, opening up their violin case, and people
Asking
put
for
in money there.
yeah.
And there are societies throughout the world have kind of asked them to take licenses or pay the society for those kind of works as well. So.
All right. So we don't know. I mean, this is what it is, but we're still waiting for more clarity from IPRS on a lot of topics. All right. So regarding the IPRS's update on live streaming of online events, is a live performance or an informal jam of covers on YouTube live on a YouTube channel considered a paid event that should require payments of royalty? So YouTube is different, right? I mean.
I don't believe it does. I don't believe it is considered paid in the way the way IPRS means. They're talking about tickets and sponsorship, things like that. So I don't believe it does.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool. All right. How does IPRS earn and pay out its employees? Basically, it's by, yeah, how does IPRS earn?
Great question. So all societies around the world, what they do is they, from the total collection, they reserve an amount of up to 5%, which is to cover their costs. A lot of societies, like for example, in Europe, societies do this. They also take a certain amount of money and put it into a culture fund, and then do events to educate, to create for the benefit of the ecosystem, things like that. So they do charge that to the overall revenue that is collected. Societies in the US don't do this. They don't do this kind of culture fund and things like that, but they do deduct their cost of operations from it. But that was about 5% of the total revenue that they collect, not more than that, I believe.
Should labels register with IPRS? You can't.
No, no. So the thing is, labels right now are registered in Indian labels are registered in India to IPRS, but that is because the way those labels have acquired the rights from films, they have acquired the publishing rights as well. So they've just been given this bundle of rights, and de facto they are the publisher. But that's not how it works
Yeah.
in
So
in a lot
technically,
of
if
other
you're
countries.
just a label, you can't. The songwriter can and the publisher can. So if you
The
become a publishing aspect of the label, then yes.
Yes,
Yeah. All right. Should a new artist register with IPRS?
I don't know what artist means.
As in, I'm assuming they mean singer-songwriter, somebody who sings, composes, writes.
Yes, for your songwriter side, you should register with IPRS. For your singer side, you should register with ISRA.
Yes, and if you're unless you're and if you're not composing and writing your own music, lyrics, etc., then then IPRS is not for you. Then it's just ISRA, ISRA. Can I sign with both CD Baby and IPRS for public administration? Yes, you can. Currently, CD Baby doesn't offer CD Baby Pro in India. CD Baby Pro, what it does is it just kind of registers you with the collecting society and helps you collect certain parts. In right now in India, we do not have Pro. So right now you can do both, definitely, because we're right now just dealing with the mechanical part as such. There should be different slabs for artists. Would that idea work? For
I I
don't
I guess I couldn't. I've not worked on that economic model, but I think it really needs to be. Lots of factors need to be taken into consideration: ticket price and how many payouts need to be made from that revenue, because you may have to pay out master side, performer side, publishing side,
and also like
and
on a lineup, you may have one big artist, one small artist, one medium artist. I mean, that just it kind of makes things more complicated, right? I mean, from the if it's going to be slabs and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah. All right.
I don't know.
Sorry, Jaren. Is IPRS worldwide like BMI, ASCAP, and other society, or just limited in the India region?
So IPRS works worldwide right now. If you're a member of IPRS, their reciprocal arrangements are both ways. It's not just one way. So they can collect on your behalf from societies like Sabam, SASEM, PRS UK, IPRA, AMCOS, and they can collect. So yes, they do represent you worldwide till you give them a letter of direction, or till you amend your assignment deed and say, I don't want you to collect from these territories. I'm registered directly.
All right. Is there a timeline on the revised tariffs from IPRS? We're waiting indefinitely.
I
We're all waiting, man.
we're, we're all waiting. I was one of to let the cat out of the bag. I was one of the people uh, waiting for the first tariff to come out, because for my clients, and these were some big shows, we didn't know how much to pay, and there were arbitrary figures. Some shows were the license fee was 1 lakh, some was 10,000, some was 2 lakh rupees, and just said, okay, how can we standardize this? What ended up happening was something different, but it's being fixed right now.
All right. So we've got a question here. How to get paid for master public performance royalties? Any other CMO to get registered with? I'm not sure. CMO with what? Collecting.
Collective management organization. So
Ah,
I would say on the master side, there is PPL, there is RMPL, and there is
okay.
Novex.
I'm going to ask you this question. So, from what I've seen from PPL's website, only labels can register, right? That's part of like a neighboring rights, right? Does PPL become neighboring rights? I'm just trying to
So,
understand that.
so essentially, yes, right now I believe they've only let labels become members.
Yeah,
But what is a label anymore?
that's what.
And
So, how do,
yeah,
yeah. So, can one register with PPL directly if they wanted to get their,
I've had some conversations with them, but I believe now everything is in review. They've got a new CEO, and who knows? Maybe at one point I had chatted about maybe producers becoming members or DJs becoming members,
yeah,
um, but right now um,
we don't
I,
know.
I would say not. But if enough of noise is made, you can. There is also RMPL, which is the regional label CMO. There is Novex, which is a private body
Mhm.
that has artists like Nuclear,
Okay. So, people,
and the
artists
Enforcement.
can join to Novax?
It's not a society. Novex is a private body
Ah,
that as an
so it's
assignment
probably a
basis. But
more,
I guess if Novex sees commercially looks at you as
whatever.
commercially viable,
Yeah.
they'll probably sign you up.
If you're
But if
making a
not,
lot of money, then it makes sense.
and yeah, and also you need to think about right now on the master side, there's no one that's recognized under the Copyright Act. There's no society that's a recognized copyright collection society under the Copyright Act. Something is supposed to happen right now. So you should be more worried about that than the IPRS tariff.
Mhm.
One of them is supposed to be, um, between PPL and RMPL, one of them is supposed to be recognized as a copyright society right now. So,
Okay. All
uh,
right. So we've got one question. I guess it is similar to US's law about payment on masters only for radio, but is the payment on performance also not paid to songwriters? I'm assuming they're talking about radio, right? I guess, I don't know. Well, we've already covered this. The radio right now is not paying songwriters.
so I think it's. I don't know if that's really true in
Okay.
that sense because um, so depending on what kind of radio it is, again now we have all kinds of definitions for radio. So there's interactive radio, non-interactive radio, like Pandora has a
Yeah.
different model and things like that. So there are different. I would suggest you go and look at Sound Exchange and what Sound Exchange does in the US.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Sound Exchange is non-interactive streaming interactive streaming, one of the two. But you look at Sound Exchange, look at Harry Fox, and you see the way they collect the way they collect money and the way they distribute it. And I believe Sound Exchange distributes it between there's a 45, 5, and 50% distribution between three parties. 5% I know goes to SAG-AFTRA and AFM, and then 45 goes to the artist. So, but check out Sound Exchange and Harry Fox and see how they're collecting money. All of their tariffs and distribution schemes are all up there, so you can check it out.
All right. We've got how much minimum royalty? I guess nobody can answer this, right? I don't know.
I I don't know honestly. I don't know what the minimum royalty is. I believe it's changed over the years, but
Yeah.
I don't know what is the minimum royalty that you will get.
And the next one is the what is the price for compose to join IPRS as a publisher? I think you said 2,200, right?
Um,
As a publisher.
yes, so I don't know if you will be allowed to do a separate registration with the same
Okay.
person as a publisher. I don't think
Okay.
it works that way. But
Yeah. So you can either be a composer or you can't do. If you're a composer, you're a composer unless you're an actual publisher. You know what I mean? You're actually doing the work.
so when you register the work, you'll say you own 100% of the work, and there's no publisher involved.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah, because publisher can only get 50%. As a if you yourself are a self-publisher, then you are just a composer who also has the publishing rights, basically.
Yeah.
When does an artist need a publisher, and why should he she get one when PRS is collecting most of the royalties? think it's mainly to exploit the songs further and exploit in a good way, not a bad way, but it's to
I
kind of
think we
help you.
answered this.
Yeah, I think we want to get sync deals and placements on TV show, things like that. So it's just to take your music further. But unless you get there are not too many good publishers in India to begin with. So it's not just about, hey, I'm going to get a publisher. Like, there's like, okay, there's Turnkey, there's a couple of more, but do they even want to sign you, first of all? And, it's like signing up with a big label at the end of the day. It's not always easy. So, that may not be the first route to take, basically. Who's the judge when it comes to genre?
Yes.
If there's a loophole to be had in a ticketed show happening in a worship of God of indie music, hey man, I believe we should all worship rock and roll. Rock and roll can save your soul. But
Um, no, I don't think to seriously answer your question.
we
No, I
can't
don't think
answer
that's
that.
a loophole.
All right, we've got a couple of more on the chats. I'll just quickly run through them. If we have already covered them, great. Because I don't want anybody to feel like we didn't answer their questions. What is the position of IPRS? No, sorry. Reading the publishing company's contract, it appears that they also take a percentage of stream plus album sales plus 50% of publishing. Is there anything left for the artist at the end of it all, considering digital sales are quite low?
So it's a lot of work, and unless you're paying an upfront fee to your publisher, I would say they deserve their due. You need to negotiate, of course, and when you have more leverage, you're able to negotiate better and negotiate those splits down. But I think number one for indie artists in India, you need to understand this is a piece of the pie that you hadn't considered before, or that you weren't collecting before. So these guys are going to do that work and collect it. Give them their due. What that is, I think it's a one-on-one conversation between you and your publisher.
And also to see if it's a good deal. I mean, the thing is, there are lots of publishers out there in the world, depending on where you're signing up. And you have to, in a year, see whether they actually could make a difference in your career or not. It's like any other deal. Like even when you sign with a manager, give it a year and just be like, okay, is there any difference? Have you tried? It's one of those kind of things, as well. So Chayan's question has been answered already. Chayan, if you haven't checked out our stream, you might want to rewatch it. But what if live stream on a third-party app like Livit? I don't know what Livit is, but Livit, does the app pay them?
I don't know.
We don't know about that.
I don't know what Livit has done, but I can tell you, like, there are apps like Mixcloud, for example. Mixcloud went ahead and got blanket licenses from a lot of the content owners, and that's how DJs were able to go out, and I mean that's how DJs are able to right now go out and play entire sets on Mixcloud, because they went ahead and got blanket licenses. Mixcloud, I don't believe, has a deal with IPRS, so it's quite different for if you're going to play Bollywood music there. But if you're going to play Western catalog, you're going to play EDM kind of catalog, Mixcloud is a good option.
All right. So non-IPRS members are exempt from these rules. If I'm setting up a live stream paid concert performing originals, then is there any implication? No. If you are doing a paid or an unpaid thing and you're not a member of IPRS and you're only playing your own originals, then there is no fee to it at the moment. Just quickly checking any of them we haven't. What's the difference between ISRA and MCAI? Do you know MCAI? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, MCAI I think is Musicians and Composers Association of India, I believe, or Music Composers Association of India, and ISRA is for performers, as in singers.
What is MCAI? Sorry,
I believe it's Music Composers Association.
Yeah. I'm not. Are they even very active? I don't know. Honestly, I'm not. I haven't.
Yeah. One of my clients is quite. I mean, he attends their meeting. They did a meeting to discuss.
All right.
To discuss these tariffs and things like that. So yeah.
Okay. All right. And one last question we've got, which is interesting. If we hire session musicians for playing on our track and pay them a one-time fee, and they are registered with IPRS, does the IPRS need to pay them too? I think it depends if they added the compositional, like if they created the composition, right?
Yeah. So essentially, if you're hiring sessions musicians don't usually um, write the music unless they are. Then they become they
Co-author.
become a co-author. Yeah, joint author on the work, and then they can register to IPRS. But if they're not, if they're just playing, they're playing. They will have a performer's right, according to me. Right now, I don't know an organization that represents the musicians' performers' right in India. The singer's performance right is represented by ISRA.
Awesome. All right. I think we're done with all the questions. I
Wow.
hope, guys, I hope this helped you. I hope this clarified some of the doubts. I know some of the terms seem a bit daunting, but we tried our best to make it as simple as possible. If you have any other questions, you can always reach out to Tin Nuts or to MGMH, or you can even, check out CD Baby. And if any of you are interested in releasing your music, come check out cdbaby.com. We are a digital distributor and we help independent artists release their music. All right, Rafael, thank you so much for being on this, lovely chat. And thank you for taking out 2 hours of your Saturday night. You can go party now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for all your questions. I hope I answered them. If not, my COVID IPR helpline, which is my WhatsApp number, WhatsApp is always open, or Facebook or LinkedIn. We always try and
Yeah.
answer
I
questions.
mean, best would be to check out Tin Nuts on LinkedIn or Facebook, MGMH, either, or any of us. You can you just write into us. We'll send you email addresses so you can, write to us on email or whatever it is. Yeah, and if you guys need anything else, this will also be up on YouTube shortly, as well as on my podcast. For those of you who haven't checked it out, MGMH now has a podcast, so check it out. All right, guys, thank you so much. We are going to end this.
Thank you. See you. Talk soon.